This is Ryan Elliott for ID Boxing. We're in Abu Dhabi. It's very late. With me, promoter Eddie Hearn. Eddie, Bivol-Ramirez press conference today. I wanted to start with the reception you got. A few claps. What was that like? You look like James DeGale on the screen at the O2.
I'm massive in Abu Dhabi. So, no, it's just, obviously, when you come to a new territory, people are genuinely pleased, intrigued, whatever you want to call it, that you're there. And, you're bringing boxing to their country and a place that's been looking for boxing, big events, big schedule for some time. So it's nice to get a warm welcome. I said to him, don't worry, you won't clap me forever. You'll boo me soon. But at the moment, it's a nice reception. It's been a great day. It's been a long day. Obviously, we flew a few media members out here. The whole thing was put together, short notice, the presser, and it was a great event. Thank you for Bivol-Ramirez for coming over. And on we go now, November 5th, already a massive card announced, 3 fights announced at the moment, and I think it's going to be card of the year.
We know you wanted the Buatsi fight, and the WBA said no, it has to be Ramirez now, but we've seen Ramirez today. He's got that big size advantage. He looks big, an intriguing fight nonetheless.
Yeah, I think before the Canelo-Alvarez fight, I think many felt it was a 50-50 fight. Bivol's come out and beaten the pound-for-pound number one, albeit with Canelo stepping outside of his weight class, but he still beat Canelo-Alvarez. So the confidence, the momentum is with Dimitri Bivol, but you saw Ramirez today. I mean, he's just starting camp, so he's a big boy at the moment, but he's going to be bigger than Bivol on the night, and he's a very good fighter. He's 44-0, former super middleweight world champion, and it's an outstanding fight.
A word on the card, Joe Cordina is going to be here making his first world title defence. We've got an undisputed title fight as well. We've got Chantel Cameron and obviously Jessica McCaskill's coming down. Has Kaylee Reese given up those titles to make this undisputed?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out actually to Kaylee Reese and Brian Cohen, because she's been trying to make the final of that Road to Undisputed tournament, and medically she wasn't able to make it. So, they paved the way and they let Chantel Cameron fight for those belts. And, if Kaylee comes back, she'd be welcome to a shot. But that's one of the best fights in women's boxing. Chantel Cameron, the chance to become undisputed. Jessica McCaskill, who's been amazing. Unified champion at 140, undisputed at 147. And Joe Cordina against Rakhimov is a great fight as well. Former world champion Rakhimov, he's the mandatory challenger. I mean, that's the first 3 fights announced for this card. Bivol-Ramirez, Cordina Rakhimov, and Cameron against McCaskill. And there'll be another world championship fight on the card and some great fights as well. So building, as we mean to go on, the Champion Series, the launch of it, November 5th here live on DAZN.
Just a word on Buatsi-Pascal. Understand that was meant to be on this card.
Yes,
had you won the purse bid, Lou DiBella came in with just shy of $1 million. Your reaction to that?
It was a big bid. I mean, I've seen now Lou DiBella and Frank Warren got together to stage that fight. It's an interesting one. It's a funky one. You'd think they'd want to invest that money in their own fighters, but it is a good fight. And I guess they're struggling to build a schedule over there, so it's a good fight for their schedule. There are some important things that we need. We tried to make a deal for that fight, and the key for us is full VADA testing for that fight. And I don't want to talk badly about Pascal, but he did fail a drugs test recently, very recently, and us as a team would require full VADA testing for that fight. So hopefully that gets in place. I'm a bit disappointed that if Frank's bidding for that fight, he's not making a Yard against Buatsi, because we made an offer to Yard for over £1 million. Oh, no, £1 million, sorry, for that fight. Might even go higher if he wants it. But, Lou and Frank have got together to win a bid. It's a good bid. $100,000 more than I bid. And we'll see what happens.
Now, we've got a little bit of time today. We've heard you say in one of our interviews recently, you're sick of the same old YouTube questions of he said, she said. So I want to go back a bit while we've got the time.
We'll go back. But, it's like, obviously I do a lot of these interviews, and one of the problems is, I look at Benson stuff, and people take like individual quotes and sometimes don't even put the full sentence in. And then all you get is people going, oh, can't believe he's saying that. Oh, he's so bitter. It's like Usyk against Fury. I said, I don't think it's a really entertaining fight, but it's a really intriguing fight. They left a really intriguing bit out, So I know that you guys and people like the chat and the social chat of, oh, he said this and he responded to this. And I'm happy to do it. Done it for 12 years. But it's good to talk about other things sometimes.
That's it. So let's go back then, before Abu Dhabi and before Usyk-Joshua in Saudi Arabia and everything else. It was Audley Harrison once upon a time. We've spoken before, and you've spoken openly about meeting him, playing poker, and going from there. How much do you remember about losing £90,000 at Ali Pali on Harrison Sprott?
Yeah. At the time, it was funny because there were 4 promoters at Sky, and it was my dad, it was Ricky Hatton, it was Frank Warren, and it was Frank Maloney at the time. And we were doing nothing in boxing. Like, my dad would use Tommy Gilmore's fighters or other fighters. We didn't really have our own fighters. At the time, the boxing on Sky was so bad. It was like barely a Commonwealth title fight topping the card and an 8-rounder, and that was it. And they'd show 2 fights like during the night. And my dad would, like, I don't know, make 10 grand, lose 10 grand, whatever. And then I just said to him, like, we need to do something different. We need to roll the dice. And, you know, we did Audley Harrison against Sprott after he won prize fighter. But I said to Audley, win prize fighter, fight for the European title, then we'll get the David Haye fight. And we put Darren Barker on the card. And yeah, we lost about 90 grand that night. And I remember at the time, obviously the business wasn't what it is now. And it was a lot of money. Like, we hadn't lost money like that on a box because we just weren't doing boxing shows. And it didn't go down very well at the time, but obviously we made that back in the commission for the David Haye fight anyway. The thing I remember most about the Audley Harrison Sprott fight is Audley tore his pec in, I think, the 2nd or 3rd round. And he was pretty awful in that fight because he couldn't really throw a punch. And I just thought all he had to do was beat Sprott. And I knew we'd get the David Haye fight. And going into, as the bell rang for the start of the 12th round, I was just like, I had a terrible grey, shiny suit on. It was awful. It was like a metallic thing. And my dad said to me, listen, I know you're gutted, but when the bell goes for the end of the fight, just get in, you know, commiserate Audley. I'll get in, congratulate Sprott, and it's just boxing. And I went, fuck that, I ain't getting in the ring. Anyway, bosh, knocks him spark out. I'm straight in the ring. Audley, oh, you're amazing. And it was, I think, when I look back, they were good days because I was so naive. You know, and I see it now with people coming into the sport. And it's quite refreshing because you don't really, you know, when you go through stuff, when you get stabbed in the back, when you experience not necessarily bad luck, but might be bad luck, might be missed drugs tests, fights fall through, people lying, and it's sort of, it takes a little bit of the fun away, you know, it becomes a little bit more. And I've always said to you guys, to IFL, whoever it is, that I see so many bitter people in boxing. And maybe, you know, sometimes I read the stuff and people say, oh, Hearn's bitter. Maybe I'm on the way. I don't know, I don't feel it, but it's what boxing does to you. And these guys, you know, Warren, he's 70 odd, Aram's 90. How can you not be bitter? But I look at those people, and not just saying it, but it's sad. Like, I look at those people compared to my dad who left boxing, and the difference in happiness and moods. Like, when I look at Frank Warren and Bob Arum, I see my dad when I was growing up. Do you know what I mean? And I see that the frustration that the game brings you, because they've, you know, I don't agree with everything they've done, but they've been shat on over the time. They've had bad luck. They've had ups. They've had downs. They've had those 90 grand nights. They've probably had those 9 million nights, Arum. But, you know, and it's not enjoyable sometimes. And you've got to be careful not to become that guy. Yeah, I look at those guys and say, I don't want to become that guy. You know, you can't live your life like that. I mean, I know they love what they do, but it's a shit life to live if you're just miserable. So I don't want to become miserable. I don't feel miserable, but you have to be careful because it's got to stay enjoyable. But I look back on those years fondly because I had a spring in my step and not a Scooby-Doo. I was just out there blagging it non-stop.
Let's talk about blagging it then, because then came a pay-per-view fight. What do you remember about negotiating a Sky box office fight without knowing what you're doing?
Well, a lot of it was with Audley's help because he knew what he was doing. Sometimes he didn't get things right, but he still knew the business, probably better than me at the time. And I was the guy who had sold him a dream. And we did it together, really. We went over to Vegas. He went through the contract with me. I sort of tagged along. I sold the fight really well because I thought he was going to win. I saw Frank's comments this week about, he always says, you fall in love with your fighters. I think all my fighters are going to win when we're in a big fight. Sometimes it's hope, sometimes it's delusion, sometimes it's love of the game, sometimes it's general belief that they're good enough to win, and sometimes you get it wrong, and I got it massively wrong that time. That was, when I was doing the press conference for that fight, my hands were shaking, my legs were shaking when I was talking. I didn't know what I was doing. I knew boxing, and that's the thing people don't realise from 8, 9, 10. I've studied boxing. I used to sit up and read the British Boxing Yearbook, which was the papered box rec. And I knew every fight, every Matchroom fight. I knew their record. I knew their opponent's records. But I'm talking about, I'm just carried away at the top table in a world heavyweight championship. But if you put yourself in the position enough, now I can do a press conference. I don't even know. If you can tell me the show 2 minutes before the press conference, I'll do the whole thing for an hour. It's not a problem. But back then, I was shaking, really, not really knowing what I was doing, but it was just the buzz.
You've spoken many times about getting booed out the arena after Hay Harrison and people telling you this, that, and the other on the way out, and you were devastated. But then Rob McCracken calls, Terry Brook calls you. The phone keeps going. You've also got Darren Barker wants to sign with you as well. Was the imposter syndrome still there when you signed Carl Froch, Darren Barker, Kell Brook?
It was a blur, really. It was just timing. Life's about timing. And there was no promoters really trying or pushing the sport. I came along back then as a 30-year-old man or kid or whatever you want to call me. And they just thought, this is good. Matchroom had a good name in the sport. But it was like, wow, Matchroom are back. And this kid's out here, he's got a big mouth. He's just promoted Audley Harrison. How did he get him a world title fight? Tony Sims put his trust in me with Darren Barker. I met Kell Brook at a prize fight, and next thing I'd signed him, Carl Froch, and now we're rocking and rolling with 3 of the best fighters in Britain. And I didn't know what I was doing then. But I made a decision that I was going to get the exclusive deal with Sky. And it was the only way I could do it because I looked at all these promoters arguing amongst themselves. Everybody hated each other. No one wanted to work together. And I said to Barney Francis at the time, you got to let Matchroom be the exclusive broadcaster. And it was like, no, we don't really do that. Everyone gets their dates. No, I'm going to show you. And I went out and, we did Brook against Matthew Hatton. It was a big breakthrough night, 8,000 Sheffield Arena. Froch against Butte, of course, was a huge night. And these viewing figures started really coming in. And when the deals were up, we got the exclusive deal. And that was the start, really, of our big run in the UK.
Worked with some big names, even the ones early on that we just touched on there. Who's the one fighter you regret not working with that you probably could have?
Fighter? Well, it's hard to say. It's hard to not say Tyson Fury. That's more recent, really. Amir Khan, we did a couple of fights with, and I really enjoyed it, and I like Amir. And perhaps we could have done something earlier in the career. I think that maybe I'm not, regardless of what people think, I'm really not slimy or slippery. And that's probably why I've pissed a few people off over the years, because I speak my mind. And sometimes I probably say things I shouldn't have. And on the way, I've pissed people off that may have stopped me working with them. Amir's one of them, because when I was with Kell, we were pushing for that fight. Carl Frampton, we started with, we lost. I was disappointed I didn't get some of his bigger fights because I felt like we did a great job for him. And then, like I said, probably David Hay maybe as well. We never really used to get on that well. And I think now, I respect him and I think he respects me as a promoter. And Tyson Fury, after meeting him in Monaco, because I just felt that he wanted, if I would have knew he would have fought Sefer, Pianetta and then Wilder, I would have jumped at it. But at the time, that wasn't the plan. And I also looked at him and thought, you're never going to fight that fight anyway. So it's remarkable what he's done. But I never really looked back with any regret on those guys, because we've had some tremendous fighters and some tremendous nights.
On to Anthony Joshua. What do you recall about the first time you met with a young Anthony Joshua?
Well, I got a letter to the office saying that this young man is in court And would I come to the court and explain that if this guy goes on and wins Olympic gold or World Championship gold, the potential for him and the financial potential in the sport? And I didn't know him. I just thought, no, I'm not going to court with start talking about some bloke I don't even know. And then I went up to the GB squad to see Carl Froch, and I just heard this guy hitting a heavy bag. And I turned around to Rob McCracken and I said, who's that? He says, Anthony Joshua. And I thought, oh shit, that's the bloke in the letter. And then obviously silver in the world, he should have won gold. And then to the Olympics, and part of me in the Olympics, so I didn't want him to win gold, but I knew, oh God, if this guy wins gold, like at the time, there was only, everyone would automatically sign with Matchroom. And I knew that if he didn't win gold, it'd be a lot easier for me to sign him, but he did win gold. He took his time and we got the signature, and he's been a massive part, like going back to the growth of our company. Talk about 12, 13 years ago when we lost 90 grand on a show. I mean, that was like crippling at the time. But now, you could do 5 times that in a show. You never want to do it, but it happens. But yeah, AJ has been a massive part of our success.
He obviously came on the back of an Olympic gold and was already being talked about, but did you have any idea whatsoever the commercial juggernaut really that you just secured?
Not really to the sizes that it would go. When you talk about that run that he went on, Dillian Whyte, Charles Martin at the O2, Brazil at the O2, Molina in Manchester, Klitschko at Wembley, Takam at Millennium Stadium, Parker at Millennium Stadium, Povetkin at Wembley, Ruiz at MSG, Ruiz in Saudi Arabia, Pulev at the O2 in the pandemic, Usyk at Spurs, Usyk in... it's only when you tell the story and you go back to Ali Pali and those kind of nights, you just realise how far we've come. And that's actually when you look back and you've got to say, and this is what AJ should be saying as well, fuck, you done well. And that goes for me. That especially goes for him because he's the one who's done it. And that's when I said, when you want, for AJ, sometimes he searches for respect from the boxing world. But the reality is, how can you take direction from people who haven't even been on your journey or aren't capable of going on your journey? That's the reality of listening to input. And he should be very proud of what he's done, and we should be as well. I mean, we're sitting in a room in Abu Dhabi, coming off the back of a heavyweight world championship fight in Saudi Arabia. And you still get people, man, they're taking boxing away from the UK. No, we're a global business that's trying to take the sport global and make massive fights around the world. And, you go back to those nights at Ali Pali, we're sitting here in Abu Dhabi, just done a media day for 3 world championship fights, the first time ever in Abu Dhabi. And at the weekend, we've got a show in Mexico. And then guess what? The week after that, we've got Canelo Triple G in Vegas. And then the week after that, we're going to be sold out for Wood against Lara in Nottingham. And the week after that, we've got Eubank Ben at the O2. Then we've got a show in Australia, our first show. Then we've got a show in America. Then we've got October 29th in the UK, November 5th here. It's an amazing story. But, it's non-stop. And with all the I think sometimes the criticism is good. Because if not, my head would explode with arrogance. So that sometimes humbles you to keep trying to win and keep trying to prove people wrong.
We haven't actually caught up with you since the Anthony Joshua fight, I don't think. Now the dust has settled, your reflections on not only the fight, but all the scrutiny on Anthony Joshua really after his outburst, his speech, whatever you want to call it.
It was out of character because he's done so well over the years to act in a way that when people say, AJ's manufactured or he's fake, no, AJ has built himself into a role model and an ambassador that he feels he should behave in a certain way because of that tag. And he's right, yeah? But what you see wasn't, say, the real AJ, but that was a frustrated young man who had the world of pressure on his shoulders, years of pressure, really, and spent the last 11 months sleeping, dreaming, working to try and defeat Oleksandr Usyk. And all of that combined made him implode. And I have to say, as a friend, it was pretty sad to see. Like what happened in the ring wasn't as sad as what happened in the press conference, because, and you go back to, men and women, and the fact that for men, when you're suffering mentally, it's a lot less acceptable to talk about it among men. But that's changing, and that the world's changing. And I feel like that was another good moment where people would look at this man Mountain, right, who for years has put on a brave face, yeah, I mean this and that, and actually crumble and start crying in front of the world. It's quite, it's not embarrassing, but I feel like the perception and the mirage as a man to break down in tears in front of people is, there's always been that feeling that that's not really acceptable. You don't really, and I think over the years he's fought against that. All the pressure he was under. No, I'm good, I'm ready, I'm done. Look at, I'm a big, strong heavyweight, and the support that he's had, he still gets criticism and stick, but generally the support that he's had and the support that I've seen has been quite humbling. And I feel like sometimes when you're building up with pressure, sometimes you got to just lift the lid off the can and let it out. And that's what happened. He imploded in the ring. He cried at the presser, and people saw it firsthand. There's no hiding place. And I think it was good for him, because I think when you're struggling, the first thing you got to do is talk about it. But to him, he talked about it. He talked to the world about it. He didn't talk to his mate about it in the pub. And that's the pressures of living in the AJ world. Your life's under a microscope. But I feel like it's going to be good for him. And I'm not just saying that I'm really excited about this next chapter. I am. Because I've seen firsthand the belts, the letters from the governing bodies. You got this mandatory now. You got 28 days to negotiate it. He gets 35%. Next, it's purse bids. And it's like, you can't do what you want to do. And all these big fights with these negotiation periods have slowed his, not momentum, but slowed his activity down. And now it's like, we're going to do what we want. The money, he's got enough money. He's never been about the money, but, obviously he wanted to make as much as possible, as everybody does. And I wanted to make as much as possible for him, for our business, and make sure that he can get what he deserves out of the sport. But now it's kind of about having fun. I want to see him fight around the world. I want to see him get that spite back. Be active, not fight once a year, fight 4 times a year, and build himself up for a shot at the world heavyweight title again. So genuinely, of course I wanted him to win, but I feel it's like we're free again, to go and do what we want. And that's how we felt when, he was going out knocking people out, and Gary Cornish and fighting Dillian Whyte. And it was the same feeling of when I was doing that press conference. Do you know what I mean? Back in the day, where you're naive and you're carefree and you're just living day by day. And then the whole world over the years, the pressure has mounted on him. When you fight in Undisputed, oh, you're rubbish. Oh, you're hype. Oh, you got stopped by Andy Ruiz. He's useless. Oh, you beat him, but he weren't even fit for that fight. And it's information overload. Information overload is one of the biggest problems out there. Even when I talk to my kids, I spoke to my daughter the other day and she said, I'm going to sleep. I've got so much going on in my mind. Yeah, you know why? Because you're sitting there reading Instagram. You're reading that website. You're on TikTok. You've got all this information, all this bullshit going in your mind. So I said to AJ, come off social media. Don't worry about what people are saying. Live your life. You're bright enough to know what you've achieved. Look at where you come from and what you've achieved. You should be so proud of yourself. So, I'm really excited about his future.
Let's talk about the future then. You mentioned that you want to take him on a bit of a world tour, but in terms of what will be either in December or January, I've heard Otto Wallen talked about, Zhang maybe. Is that the kind of level?
Yeah, I think they're good fights for him to come back to. I mean, I said earlier, I saw again, people take one quote out of context. I like the Dillian Whyte fight. I think that's a great fight for next year. Deontay Wilder remains one of the biggest fights in the sport. I think he'll, at the moment, I'm not putting any pressure on him to fight in December. He wants to fight in December. We're not going to make a decision on that yet, but we're getting ready and we're working on it just in case. And I think December 10 or December 17, you'll see the return of Anthony Joshua.
We've talked a bit about certain quotes blowing up. I'm sure you saw the Robert Garcia comments that were circulating, which he sent kind of gone on ES News and explained a bit better. What did you make of what Robert Garcia said?
He said it in Spanish, didn't he? And it was translated. But yeah, Robert's going to have his opinion, and I think his opinion will always be valid because he's a very good trainer and coach. And it was the first time working together. I don't know if they'll continue. It's up to AJ. AJ had a great time with him, and he respects him. And I think some of them, Usyk was mentally stronger than AJ. I think he probably was. I think Usyk's very strong mentally. I mean, he's been boxing since he was about 7 or 8. He had 400 amateur fights. He's hugely experienced. So, but yeah, I think we'll see what's next. Where AJ's going to train, what's he going to do, and I'm sure he's got his own ideas.
If he retires having not fought Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder, will there be regrets?
He wants to fight them. I mean, honestly, and no one will ever believe us, but we did everything we could to make the Deontay Wilder fight, and we really tried to make the Tyson Fury fight as well. Whose fault it was, I really don't know, but I'm just telling you, we wanted those fights, and we want those fights now. I get the question I get 100 times more than any other question when I'm walking down the street is, when's AJ fighting Tyson Fury? So, I mean, we would make that fight now, and I believe that fight is going to be there. It's going to be there next year. Obviously, at some point, Fury is going to actually retire. But it's a massive fight. Fury AJ is still a much bigger fight than Fury against Usyk. In fact, AJ against Wilder is a bigger fight than Fury Usyk, in my opinion. But there's so many huge fights out there for AJ. But right now, it's about getting active and getting back in the ring in December.
I heard you saying earlier that you have doubts if Tyson Fury's a man of his word and wants to stick to the $500 million price tag he has. You have doubts about that happening.
I just said, like, it's tongue in cheek, Tyson Fury said he's not fighting for a penny less than £500 million. So therefore, he ain't fighting. But obviously, he will fight for less than that. But we'll see what happens.
Just a couple more things to whiz through. On Fury Usyk, the final one on that. Who wins and how?
I said, again, I've backed against Fury twice particularly. One was the Klitschko fight and one was the first Wilder fight. And he was outstanding in both. I just feel that Usyk just finds a way. I don't know how he deals with the size of Fury, and that's one of the things that wins him the fight. If you asked me to pick a winner, I would pick Usyk. But Fury's proved me wrong so many times, he'll probably beat him.
Word on Dillian Whyte, we were hearing that the Dubois fight was close. You're saying they're stadium for AJ next year. Have you got anything for him this year?
Yeah, we're talking. I'm going to catch up with those guys later in the week. I think I'm sure he's got offers from BT, probably the Dubois fight, from Sky. I don't know what fight with what heavyweight. From us, we've got 4 or 5 heavyweights for him to fight. And of course, we want him to fight AJ next year. So we'll see what happens, but we'd love to work with Dillian again. We've had a very successful run and we'll see where it goes.
Joyce-Parker, interim championship status on the line, 10 days after WBO title's on the line. Your thoughts?
A load of rubbish. I mean, I really like the WBO and I really like Paco and I really like Gustavo. I think he's an outstanding operator. But again, this goes back to me just being honest and speaking my mind. How can you have an interim world title fight when they've just fought for the title? Usyk, I mean, and by the way, they've just done a WBO mandatory. In a circle of mandatories, which is what happens, the WBO is now last on that mandatory list. So how can you have an interim world title? An interim world title under the WBO rules is generally when a fighter's injured. Usyk's not injured. So I don't understand that. And it's irrelevant anyway, in all honesty.
Last one, we thought Edwards-Martinez was close. It's gone quiet. Anything you can tell us on that?
Yeah, there may be a delay on that fight. We're still working on it. But Martinez will be out in October. We'll see if that's against Sonny Edwards or against another champion. But there'll be an announcement soon.
All right, Eddie, it's very late. Appreciate your time. We'll catch you very soon.
Good, mate.